put some rubber on tarmac, and also the rider has been to learn also about the data. We try different gearing, final gear ratio, and we compare at the end of the session different riders. For the moment, it seems that the so high temperature doesn't seem the biggest problem. It seems that the bike is working well. We just need to fix a couple of areas. But we are in general quite happy about the first feedback from the rider.
Thanks, Marco.
Thank you.
7.5 minutes remaining in free practice 2. Jonathan Rea, a quarter of a second down on his latest lap coming into the final sector, loses further ground in sector 4. That's been a trend compared to Razgat Lioglu throughout the day, that final sector that pretty much everyone losing time through.
Yeah, and it is a little bit closer in that final sector compared to what it was in free practice 1, but certainly that's an area where you would expect the Yamaha to be quite strong. For Jonathan Rea, he's spent a bit of time in sector 1. He's only a tenth of a second slower than TOPRAK now, so he's closing in on what he needs to do. But it is piece by piece for Rea, but obviously enough. No points, no prizes in free practice. It's all about what you're going to do in the Super Bowl session tomorrow, and then obviously the opening race the weekend.
Yes, it is in that final sector that Rea's actually made up a little bit of his time compared to Razgat Lioglu, and certainly compared to free practice 1. TOPRAK still finding the time pretty much everywhere, though, isn't he? Looking good in this session. A couple of tenths clear. This is Axel Bassani. Bassani at the moment sits in P4, and another strong display from him. He sits as top Ducati.
Yeah, it's interesting when we look at the overall sector times. Obviously, we've seen TOPRAK really consistent all the way through today's running. In the first and the fourth sections, Kawasaki have made a step forward. Lowe's fastest in sector 1, and Jonathan Rea fastest in sector 4. TOPRAK fastest in sector 2 and 3. So it is a case of everyone now trying to find that natural balance and where their bikes work a little bit better than others.
Locatelli coming over the line, similar lap to what he had done for his best in this session. Leon Haslam's just popped up into P4, so that catches a bit by surprise. Haslam was further down the order than that. 34.6 from Leon Haslam. A couple of signs on occasions for Honda over the course of these 2 free practice sessions so far.
Yeah, and we've seen from Honda over the course of this year, there is a good bike in that package. It's just been a case that they haven't been always able to get the most out of it. It's really competitive in World SBK now. When you look at the Yamahas, the Kawasaki's and the Ducatis, all very consistent all the way through. It does make it very difficult if you're not quite able to get to that limit of your bike to then get yourself into those leading positions. We've obviously seen Bautista with podiums. Haslam had a podium as well this year, and it has been a case of, for both of them, they've had to try and make those steps.
Good for Garrett Gerloff, his start to the weekend. I hope we see it for the rest of the weekend as well, to send him into the winter with a little bit of a confidence boost. He was a little bit closer to the front over the last couple of rounds compared to what he had been. It's been almost anonymous spell for Garrett Gerloff. You'll think all the way back to Assen, the first 4 rounds of the season. Gerloff was absolutely superb, and you would have never in a million years believed that Axel Bassani was going to get on terms with him later on in the season and start to challenge for top independent, and that's something that Gerloff is actually going to genuinely have to defend over the course of this weekend, because he sits in 8th position in the championship, only 14 clear of Bassani.
Yeah, and certainly for Gerloff, up until Assen really looked like he was consistently at the front, able to run at the same pace and really battle with everyone in those leading positions. Had some podiums at the start of the year. I give Leon Haslam a bit too much credit there. Front row for Haslam, not a podium. I just remember him dead in Park Ferme a couple of times, but certainly for Garrett Gerloff, hopefully this is the sign of what we're going to see from him again next year. We want to see him up at the front of the field. He's an exciting rider. He's obviously had some tough times through the course of this season, but you want to see him able to show exactly what he can do on a superbike.
Yes, Haslam's had a P4 and a P5. That's close enough, and a P4-5, I'm afraid, as far as next season is concerned, as he's set to move on from World SBK. 3 minutes still on the clock for FP2. Razgat Lioglu, the fastest man out there, but Jonathan Rea has chipped away at that margin. Garrett Gerloff also very much on the pace, and Leon Haslam with that stunning effort to go P4. Alex Lowe's currently rounds out the top 5. We come in now to the final laps from all of our big guns. Michael van der Mark just setting a new personal best, 1 minute 34.938.
Yeah, so we've got the leading 11 riders now in the 1 minute 34s as well, so it is getting a lot closer now with Scott Redding all the way went down in 11th, but only 8 tenths of a second off the pace, but on course for an improved lap time now as well. Alvaro Bautista on course for a fast lap as well at the halfway stage. TOPRAK on course for another consistent lap there, 34.3. That's about a tenth of a second off of his fastest time, but still faster than what we've seen from anyone else.
That's when Razgatlioglu can set a time that isn't an improvement, but is still faster than anyone else, that he is able to underline just the consistency that he is going to be able to demonstrate over the course of this weekend. Alvaro Bautista, well, we've just seen Leon Haslam put in a really strong lap. He's now made his way back into the pits, so that may well be the end of his session, at least competitively. Alvaro Bautista here, see if he can match his teammate. He actually betters him, goes up into P4, and again, a reminder, we've got less than a second covering the top 12 in this session.
Yeah, and for the top 12, it's only 8 tenths of a second separating them. It's going to get a little bit closer now as well. Scott Redding just coming into the last couple of corners. We catch up with the number 45. He's half a second off the pace, but couldn't move himself up a couple of positions here.
Well, he only needs to gain 2 tenths of a second. He'll move all the way up from 12th position and up to 7th, and that's exactly what happens. 1 minute 34.827. Redding does go P7. Meanwhile, out on the circuit with 2 minutes to go, Garrett Gerloff heads into the 3rd sector, and he's up at the halfway mark on Razgatlioglu.
Yeah, Gerloff up by 400ths of a second, so good run through the first half of the lap, just about to come through to the end of Sector 3 as well. We'll keep an eye on his lap times on the number 31 Yamaha. Loses a bit of ground in Sector 3, he's 2 tenths of a second off now.
And Andrea Locatelli also losing a couple of tenths of a second through that 3rd sector. He is in line still for a new personal best to try and move himself up from 8th position. Scott Redding with a strong 1st sector on his latest lap. We're only 1.5 minutes away now from the checkered flag falling, so we're in towards final lap territory for several of these riders. Michael Ruben Rinaldi and Scott Redding into the second half of their latest laps, both a couple of tenths of a second down at this stage, but Garrett Gerloff 6 tenths down in the end on his latest lap. We saw him come up with a bit of a single lap cracker late on in FP1. He's got to kind of justify that pace over a longer distance over the course of tomorrow.
Yeah, well, he's been able to put in 3 pretty fast laps in a row there, 34.4 and then a 34.7 and 34.8, so decent enough consistency there at the end of the session.
1 minute to go then, and rejoin Scott Redding, a few tenths of a second down. He should be able to get this lap completed and have time for one more in the remainder of free practice 2. It is Redding who is at the moment the only rider on the move as far as the front runners are concerned. Chaz Davies has just made up a couple of positions, but only into P15, so work for him to do over the course of this weekend. Redding crosses the line to go P5, splits Bautista and Haslam in the pecking order. 1:34.579, Scott Redding's time, 3.5 tenths of a second down on Razgatlioglu. We ride on board now.
Yeah, Redding actually fastest of all in Sector 3 as well now, so he's been able to find some progress over the course of the last couple of sessions as well.
Alvaro Bautista won't improve on his final lap. He's lost over a second through Sector 2 after being 7 thousandths of a second up through Sector 1. Razgatlioglu there exiting the final turn and crosses the line to complete his session and see the checkered flag with a 1:34.612. So a little bit slower than his previous lap, but he's not going to mind too much about that. Razgatlioglu's got this session, he's got Friday sewn up here at the Mandalika International Circuit, and with a series of stunning laps faster than his nearest rival, Jonathan Bragg.
Yeah, and what's going to be interesting is to see that for TOPRAK, he's fast in each of the sectors, very fast in Sector 2, but for Jonathan Rea, he's making most of his lap time in the second half of the lap.
If Chaz Davies gets caught up behind Oliver Koenig here, he may well lose what looks set to be his personal best lap, and I'd say that's going to go away from him now. He makes his way through on the inside line, and that's where we're talking about the potential overtaking zone in between turns 15 and 16. It's certainly one of the slowest, if not the slowest corner on the circuit, and Chaz Davies using that to good effect to get through on Oliver Koenig, and it is a new personal best, but I fancy that Davies probably would have moved up in positions if he hadn't got caught behind the rider who's effectively a backmarker, with all due respect, this weekend on his World SBK day.
Yeah, Chaz lost 7 tenths of a second in that final sector, so that's catching Koenig into that sector. Koenig's actually made some good progress in this session. He's been able to get himself well underneath the 107% time that you have to set to qualify for a race, and he's been able to find, I think, about 3 seconds in this session as well. So he's been able to make a big step forward on that Kawasaki as well.
And purely in numbers terms, probably not not too far off what other riders have been doing on that same bike this season, to be honest.
Yeah, we've seen the likes of Epis and Crescent. He actually found 4.5 seconds in this session, so he's made a big step forward from this morning. Obviously, enough track conditions have improved a lot, but for Oliver, he's also trying to learn how to ride a World SBK bike. This is his first outing on a World SBK spec bike. He has ridden a superbike in the Endurance World Championship.
Yes, but even then, for only a fairly limited spell, having jumped straight up from Supersport 300, which is a world away from what he's going to be racing this weekend, and to send best of luck to him to try and mix it with these big guns is far from easy. In fact, 1.7 seconds covering the entire field, aside from Koenig, who's down in 20th position. So just to underline how close they are, a bit of a gap behind the top 12 positions. Isaac Vinales, 12th fastest, less than 3/4 of a second slower than TOPRAK Razgatlioglu P1, and then 4/10 to Tom Sykes' next best. So we've seen two groups develop over the course of FP2. You've got only 7.5 tenths covering the top 12, and then 1.7 covering the entire 19, with Oliver Koenig the outsider, as it were, in that sense.
Yeah, I think it's also worth mentioning that Isaac Vinales up there inside the top 12, only 7/10 of a second off, being able to carry forward that form that we saw in Portimao in Argentina. That's good to see from the Orlac Kawasaki team.
Yes, good news for him as well, as he heads towards the winter. We're winter in Europe, but it certainly doesn't feel like it at the moment for me, I can tell you that. The air temperature and the humidity here in Indonesia really is quite stunning. It's open the commentary box door is like opening your oven door back home. Razgatlioglu just making his